Dundats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
We've got a great roster, and I can't foresee a circumstance where we're not going to say, man, we're going to do everything we can to win now, and compete for a championship.
Translation, the Saints are not, I repeat, are not in rebuilding mode. Welcome to another Been There, Done That podcast. I'm your host, Mike Nabors. I'm going to bring in my team, producer Justin Thomas and Scott Shanle. You know, I know the Saints season is over, Saints fans, but we're a Saints podcast, but we're also an NFL podcast. We like to bring in different layers of the Saints family. We're going to talk to Scott Shanle about his old friend Dan Campbell and his entertaining first presser as head coach of the Detroit Lions. And Campbell's going to talk about why Sean Payton helped him in so many ways. Also, the Super Bowl's on the horizon. You have the Bucs and the Chiefs. I have some sound, a great interview with Bucs general manager Jason Licht, who gives you the background on their mindset in bringing Tom Brady to Tampa Bay. So more from Mickey Loomis as well. But Shanle, you know, I feel sorry for Mickey Loomis. The press conference was around 15 minutes. And he said absolutely nothing because he can't say anything, Shanle.
It's that time of year where so many fans have so many questions. And the one guy you don't want to be right now is the GM of a team that's $100 million over the cap. And everybody wants to know, what are you going to do to replace your Hall of Fame quarterback? So I don't know how Mickey does it and how he did that press conference without saying much. But it's an art. And that's why he's a GM for as long as he's been, I guess.
I feel like it's the credit card I had in college that I eventually will pay off, but I'm going to keep putting money on it. Justin, did you have one of those credit cards as a youngster? I bet you were very responsible.
No, yeah, I was pretty responsible. I don't think I got a credit card that young. I was a little bit older. Maybe right towards the end of college is when I got my first one.
Remember, I got my first credit card. I put some on it, and then when I paid it off, I got a radio gig, my first job in Tuscaloosa. I went from making nothing to a little bit more than nothing, but I felt like a millionaire because I had that second job and I paid it off, man. It was huge. But Shanle, you know, Mickey Loomis talked about, you know, we'd love to keep Trey Hendrickson. I don't know. We're going to get his thoughts on the quarterbacks and everything. But in your eyes, just looking at this team right now, Breeze will eventually announce he's going to retire probably in the coming weeks here. But there's a lot of questions. Is there something that concerns you the most about this football team right now?
The quarterback position. I mean, that I think is the number one question for everybody. When you have no idea who's going to be your quarterback, you can throw away what the rest of your roster looks like. You can throw away who you draft because if you're trying to win a Super Bowl right now, you're looking at 2021, you have to have a good feeling for who your quarterback is going to be. Do you have confidence in that guy? And then secondly, the cap number. I know everybody's talking about, you know, the Saints have done it in the past. Oh, don't worry. It's only $100 million. Are you kidding me? That is a lot of money to figure out where you're going to borrow from in future years. That is a lot of money to figure out who you're going to renegotiate, who you're going to release. So this roster is going to look different. And those are my two biggest concerns.
Somebody's going to overpay for Trey Hendrickson, and I would be surprised if they can keep him. But a name that I hear that I thought would be gone, but I'm hearing more of a groundswell support, especially among the coaching staff, is Marcus Williams. They really want to keep Marcus Williams. Are you hearing that too?
Well, I think a lot of it is Marcus has played since day one. Since he stepped into the organization, he's played a lot of football. Now, fans are divided on whether or not that's been good football or consistent enough football. I would like to see Marcus play more consistent football because I think he is a good football player and he does some good things, but I just need to see the consistency week in and week out. When you've played that much football, probably see him make more plays. Now, I've been spoiled because I played with some great safeties who were kind of ball hawks and made a lot more plays. But I just think the other thing Marcus has working in his advantage as far as the Saints wanting to retain him is they've never developed any depth behind him. He's stayed on the field for so many years and for so long. They put that trust in him, and to his advantage, they haven't put anybody behind him to take over his spot and allow him to walk free agency. So I'm sure they will target him more heavily than people thought.
And I think one thing we do know for sure, and we talked about this in our last podcast, but it becomes more and more clear that they got to, re-up Ramczyk and Lattimore. It's important, obviously, because they're great players, but you don't want them to go into next season. It will never happen that they won't go and sign. I can't imagine that happening at all.
No, Ramczyk sounds like he's the guy that they're really targeting as far as trying to make it work. I mean, I've called him the best tackle in football. If not the best, he's in the top 3. I think he could play either left or right tackle. He's got a tremendous skill set. Played since he's been a rookie, he's been outstanding. But some of the rumblings and some of the rumors were that Marshawn Lattimore could be shopped, and whether that's in a Stafford trade or some other trade for a quarterback, who knows? And I don't know. I mean, I know you need to address the quarterback position. I just don't know if using a guy like Marshawn Lattimore as trade bait is what you want to do, because for years, when you talk about struggling 14, 15, 16, being a 500 ball team, it was a lot because your corners weren't good. And Marshawn Lattimore has been one of the best corners in the league. So I think you got to lock him and Ramczyk up. And if you're looking for trade bait, use somebody else.
Maybe the Chiefs would revisit the draft and they could just flip-flop Lattimore and Mahomes. Would that work?
That would work for me. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
That would work.
Yeah.
Marshawn, you've been great, but I'm sorry.
If he wins another Super Bowl, come on, Andy, you got enough. You got a couple. Help us out a little bit here. We'll get to the Super Bowl in a little bit and talk to Jason Light. Boy, what an interesting discussion he had with Peter King on Tom Brady. I think Saints fans would even be interested in that approach. But let's get back to Mickey Loomis. He didn't say anything, and I'm not faulting Mickey Loomis. I wouldn't say anything if I was the general manager either. I always get a kick out of these pre-draft press conferences. Like you're going to get up there and say anything. Like you're going to give any other team anything at all. But here's what Mickey Loomis had to say on the future of the quarterback position that Scott Shanle and all you Hoodats are so concerned about.
Generally speaking, we target our own guys first, but again, that there's a lot of that. The answers to that remain to be seen here, and we'll get the answers to that over the next few weeks.
Boy, he's so good at saying nothing. That's the talent of Mickey Loomis, along with crunching numbers and evaluating personnel. That was excellent. Sean Payton said the quarterback is in the building. Sean Payton, is he going to change his mind, Shanle? Is that a possibility, or is he going to stick to his guns? I mean, is it too early to say? What's your gut telling you?
My gut is telling me that they're researching all options. And I know Coach Payton believes that the quarterback's in the building if they're forced to go that route. But I also say forced because I think that you've seen this team since Coach Payton's been there that they're all in. They're all in on trying to win. And you can't ask for more than that as a fan. So the possibility of him going out there and looking for a trade with Matthew Stafford would not surprise me. The possibility of him going out there and looking for a way to bring Deshaun Watson in would not surprise me. And I think that's exciting as a fan that they're always trying to bring the best players in the building.
If you're Sean Payton, how do you feel right now? I mean, you've gone through this, man, great record, playoff disappointment. He's got to go to the Senior Bowl right away or evaluate talent. I mean, how do you think it is to be a head coach like Sean Payton and go through this cycle now really for 4 years?
It's got to be tough. I mean, you as a fan, you get so emotionally invested. And we all said going into this playoff run, we're all kind of cautious. We're all kind of we're optimistic, but we're guarded. But as a coach, you can't be that way. As a player, you can't be that way. You have to be all in. So when you're all in and you face this disappointment every single year for the past 4 years, it's extremely exhausting. And that's why I give this team and I give this coaching staff, I give Coach Payton a ton of credit because of the energy level it takes to get up for every single year and for them to bounce back and be 13-3 and be 12-4. It's a tremendous credit to their resiliency and their perseverance. And he's going to do the same thing. He's going to spend 15 or 16 hours a day again at the office trying to come up with a game plan that benefits his offense the most to try to win games. It's just a credit to their perseverance as a coaching staff to do it year after year.
Do you feel, I don't know if Saints fans, if you feel this way, I'd love to get your feedback on, we love feedback. We had actually a listener, Danny Jones, say, we want more stories from you guys. And we may solicit fans with questions and on topics. And Shanle always has great stories. And I have some good stories covering the team for a long time. But, in terms of Jameis Winston, I want to say that Sean Payton can fix him, but I don't know at the end of the day if anybody can fix him. That's the $1 million question with him right now. Taysom Hill, I know how you feel about him as a starter in the NFL. and a lot of people feel the way you do. There's so many question marks with the guys, quote unquote, in the building. I do think a Matt Stafford is intriguing. A guy like that who's proven himself with a supporting cast that's not even close to what the Saints have. He's never had a Michael Thomas. He's never had an Alvin Kamara. That's why, to me, Stafford's intriguing, and that's why when you talk about exploring options, I'm sure Sean Payton's thinking the same thing, Shanle.
Wait, how can you say you never had a Michael Thomas when you had Calvin Johnson?
I was just going to go there, Justin. Calvin
All right,
Johnson.
the whole thing. The offensive line, the Kamara, the Thomas, the whole platter. Okay, you got me.
I was going to
the
get
whole platter. The whole platter.
I was gonna say he's never had a coach like Sean Payton, and I think that's the biggest piece that's missing to the Stafford puzzle. And he's had so many different coordinators. He's played so many different offenses, but he still puts up great numbers. Matthew Stafford intrigues me the most. I think Deshaun Watson, I don't think is going to happen. You have to give up too much draft capital for him because he's a young player. What's crazy about Matthew Stafford is this guy is viewed as in his prime because of Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Because of these guys playing in their 40s, a 32-year quarterback 10 years ago, you would have said, nah, he's almost done. We don't want him. Matthew Stafford, he could have 7 to 10 good years left in him, depending how good he takes care of his body. So that's a lot of years in the NFL world. And to bring him in and see him play under the same head coach for 4 or 5 years, I think he could be really good in the Saints offense.
Thanks for keeping me in check, Justin. Point taken. I get it. And Calvin Johnson never tweeted like Michael Thomas either. Thomas, enough with the tweets on Breeze's arm. Just enjoy your off season, Whatever. That irritated me.
Hey, Mike didn't complain last year when he caught 140.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love these guys who tweet like that and then send out another tweet. All you guys just care about what I say. Then why are you tweeting then? Just enough. Stop it. Just golly. Oh my goodness. That's another whole rant. But, to me, I saw Mike Florio, Pro Football talk about possible destinations for Aaron Rodgers. He kind of snuck the Saints in there, Shanle. What about Aaron Rodgers? There's no way they could afford him. Could they?
That's not going to happen. I mean, I would love it. I mean, that would be the number one choice for everybody. Deshaun, you can wait. I mean, Aaron Rodgers for 4 years, I think you're looking at Super Bowls in the Saints organization. And say what you want about him not coming up in big games. His skill level in Coach Payton's offense would be unbelievable. But no, I don't think that's going to happen because I think you're going to have to give up too much draft picks for a 38-year-old quarterback, and I don't think it'd be worth it. And at the same time, I think Aaron wants a new deal. He's looking at being mid $20 million, and he's looking at these other guys making almost $40 million. He wants a new deal. So, no, I don't think the Saints could afford him, trade-wise or contract-wise.
Speaking of quarterbacks, I thought about this. I live in Tampa, and boy, Bucs fans, I call it Dust Monday. They wipe the dust off their flags that have been in their garage for like 18 years, and they're all over Tampa Bay now, and good for them. It's like the Cleveland fan base or Buffalo. It's been a while since you've been in the playoffs. It's been a while since you've had success and you're in the Super Bowl and you earned it, and Tom Brady's a great story. But a part of me is thinking, Tom Brady, and some people are saying, this is the best story in the history of Tampa Bay sports. From a city where the teams have been in the World Series, they've won 2 Stanley Cups, they've won a Super Bowl, and I think they mean if Tom Brady can win it all. But how do you feel about this parallel? If Tom Brady wins it all for the Bucs, and good for them, and we're going to get to Jason Light and how they made all this happen, the general manager of the Bucs. But is it kind of equivalent to buying a championship, like LeBron going to Miami and teaming up? It's not like Breeze and Payton that kind of built it from the ground up in 2006. Do you have a different feel? Even though it is a championship, you give them credit, but it's a different feel, Shanle.
I'm going to disagree with Mike. We're disagreeing with you today. Not good for them. No, I will not feel good for Tampa Bay fans.
I like disagreement.
Hiding out for the last 18 years, wearing their Derek Brooks and John Lynch jerseys and their jerseys, and now all of a sudden, I've been here the whole time. What are you talking about? Well, where's your Jeff Garcia and your Chris Sims jersey then, buddy? I don't feel good for the Buccaneers fans because they're in the NFC South. I consider them any team in the NFC South a rival. I don't want to see them win 2 Super Bowls, have one more than the Saints. But you know what? Jason Light put together a good roster. I give them credit because they still have tons of cap room, by the way, if you look at their salary cap space. So a credit to them for setting up their roster with the ability to win a Super Bowl. They were missing one piece. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And And because of the roster he put together, Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay. I mean, if he hadn't assembled the roster the way he did, Tom Brady was going to go somewhere else. So that's a credit to him, having an enticing roster assembled for the greatest quarterback ever to play the game to come do it. But I do kind of agree. It takes away from it. It's more NBA when you look at it that way. Like, you borrowed a guy for a year or two to win a couple championships. It takes away from the meaning of it.
Oh, I'm not saying I'm happy for him. I'm just saying it's a different feel where it was such a great story in New Orleans where Breeze and Payton, they really helped each other. Payton revitalized Breeze, and Breeze obviously helped Payton. And you look at Kansas City, I mean, Reed's obviously been good for Mahomes. I think Mahomes may be good anywhere, but you never know. I mean, it's just a different feel with the Tampa Bay Bucs. Peter King is so good, and he's such a good interviewer. He had a one-on-one. You got to check it out on his website. But with him and Jason Light, the Bucs general manager, he asked him a lot of questions about how they got Tom Brady, and Jason Light really explained the Field of Dreams mantra they had in getting Tom Brady. Here's what he told Peter King.
It became known as Operation Shoeless Joe Jackson. So we then throughout the process, Spytech would pop into my office, or Mike Beal, my college director, or Mike Greenberg, our cap guy, or Rob McCartney, my pro director, and just like every once in a while would say, "Hey, go the distance," and drop little lines from Field of Dreams.
Light was hoping they'd get Tom Brady. I don't think he ever thought they would get Tom Brady. Bruce Arians is really cocky. He says, "Why wouldn't he want to come here?" It's an amazing story, Shanle, but I thought that was a great approach. And I think behind the scenes, I mean, Jason Lights really made the most of his second chance. He drafted horribly his first 5 years. He drafted a kicker in the second round, which at the time I didn't have a problem with, but I'm not the general manager. I mean, there's a lot of moves he didn't make, but then he drafted Vita Vea, then he drafted Devin White. He rebuilt the secondary in a lot of ways. He's made the most of his second chance, and he's a Nebraska guy, so you got to like him, right?
Well, I like him, but I don't love him. And I don't love him because he knocked the Saints out of the playoffs, and because they're obviously a competitor now for the Saints. But yes, he did. He built a good roster, and they gave him enough time there to do it. I mean, this is the third head coach he's been on. But all that being said, the Devin Whites, the Levante Davids, the Ndamukong Suhs, you signed one guy who got you to where you are. If you don't have Tom Brady on that team, you're probably not even a playoff team. It's a credit to Brady more than anybody else.
How do you guys think Jameis Winston's feeling right now? Is it, in one hand, is he thinking, well, it took the GOAT to win it. It's not like I was replaced by Garoppolo and he took him all the way. Or is he also thinking, man, I'm going to work so hard this offseason and I'm going to be the guy next year and I'm going to go in there and play him? I wonder, if is it mixed? Is it a little bit of both? I mean, as a player, how do you think Jameis feels right now?
Oh, it's got to be much easier to take when this guy is always he's in the conversation, and now most people say he's the greatest player of all time, especially the greatest quarterback of all time, the most accomplished player of all time. Jameis, how can you sit there and hang your head? I mean, it's the equivalent of you being a basketball player and then bringing Michael Jordan in, and Jordan got that team to the championship and won. I mean, you have nothing to hang your head about. You had great seasons. You turned the ball over too much, but you threw for a lot of yards. You showed you could play at this level. It's just you aren't Tom Brady, which nobody else is.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk about a guy you know a lot about, and he is one Dan Campbell, former Saints assistant coach, former head coach with the Miami Dolphins for a little while, and former teammate of Scott Shanle back in your Dallas Cowboys days. You guys didn't play together in New Orleans at all, did you?
Dan came in at the end of his career. They signed him. I believe it might have been the Super Bowl year, 2009. He came in. He got hurt in training or mini camp, and I think he went on injured reserve the whole year. So we reunited in New Orleans very briefly. Did nothing after minicamp, but the funny thing about Dan Campbell was he was always entertaining. Okay, so his New Orleans Saints time was very short. He comes in, gets hurt in minicamp. I don't even know if he ever put on pads in New Orleans Saints jersey. So go all the way through the season, win the Super Bowl. We have exit physicals. We're all in the training room. And we're getting looked at over by doctors. Yeah, we're not hurt. There's nothing wrong with us. We're all standing there, and Dan Campbell busts through the doors and yells, all right, guys, we did it. And everybody's looking at him like, who the hell are you?
That's awesome.
It was hilarious because there were so many guys that don't even remember that Dan was on the team. I knew because I knew Dan, but everybody's like, who is this guy? But he must. Yeah, the visual, I mean, you just got to imagine those doors going into the doctors. Everybody standing there getting EKGs, getting blood drawn, all these different things. And here comes a long-haired, curly-haired guy looking like a WWE wrestler busting through the doors yelling, we did it, guys!
Well, I want more on Dan Campbell, but first, I'm sure every football fan has heard this, but move over Jim Mora. I think you may be beat at a press conference. Here's what Dan Campbell had to say initially at his opening press conference as the brand new head coach of the Detroit Lions.
This team's going to be built on, we're going to kick you in the teeth. All right. And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off. All right. And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. All right. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap and we're going to get up. And then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Shanle, he's taking hunks, man. He's biting kneecaps. Have you ever heard this in a locker room before?
You know, Dan as a player was entertaining. Nobody played harder. Nobody gave more effort. But I was watching that press conference. I'm thinking, Dan, you know, portraying your team's going to be a bunch of cannibals probably isn't the best way to open the press conference. And I'm going to be honest, the whole bounty thing. The bounty thing was like, I was thinking, okay, Goodell, are you going to start looking at Dan now and saying, what are you talking about going after kneecaps? And there's so many different levels of the NFL that I'm sure people didn't like what he had to say. But as a player, when your coach who played the game has that type of fire and that type of intensity and is giving you a vision of how tough and how blue collar your team is going to be, I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I watched the whole press conference because I saw a clip and I'm thinking, I have to watch this whole thing. And it was raw. You could tell he had some things he wanted to say, but he just let it loose. And I think, you know, if I'm a GM or an owner and I just interviewed this guy and I just introduced him and I told the world of how after interviewing all these people, this is the guy, I would have cringed at that a little bit. But if I'm a player, I kind of like it. And this is what I really like later in the press conference. Is this young reporter asked him, I don't know if you saw this whole thing, Shanle, but this young reporter from Detroit asked him, hey, you seem kind of loose. We can ask you anything. Has anybody said you're kind of like the dude in Big Lebowski? and Campbell's like, oh, yeah, I get that all the time.
Yeah, he did get that all the time.
I mean, that to me, from a media standpoint, I would love to cover a guy like that. So I think a lot of that could be misconstrued. I cringe too, and I'm sure the league cringed. I wonder if Sean Payton or if some people called him afterwards and said, hey, it's great to be raw, but you can't be that way all the time. I mean, you got to kind of walk that line, but you got to be who you got to be, Shanle, too. I mean, I'm sure that was the attraction of Dan Campbell.
Yeah, and Dan's he's passionate and he cares. And I don't know if I saw him walk in the indoor facility when they were walking around the facility. He broke down in tears. And Dan's this big, burly, tough guy, and he was emotional. It was the job he wanted. He felt like Detroit fit his personality. He is a blue-collar guy through and through, and he felt like he matched the city. And to hear him talk about what the Saints did for New Orleans and what he hopes to do in Detroit was pretty special that he made that tie-in. But, yeah, I think when you look at his press conference, it's one of those things that's tricky. If you win, people are going to pub it up and they're going to talk about it and they're going to want more of it. But if you're not winning and you go Adam Gase, they're going to talk about your first press conference and, oh, we should have knew this was coming because his press conference wasn't good. Yep. And that's the way they view coaches based on their first reaction with them.
No doubt about it. But here's what Dan Campbell, he thanks so many people within the Saints building, from Mickey Loomis to a lot of people. But his biggest praise was for Sean Payton. And here's what he appreciated the most from the Saints head coach.
Sean was always about, give me a player that I know exactly who he is and what he's going to be every day, and I can do something with that guy. It's the guys that are up and down and the ones that they spike here, and then all of a sudden they're down. He said, I don't know what to do with those guys. I got nothing for them.
All right, so that's what he said about Sean Payton. He likes guys who are consistent, guys he knows what he can expect from. And I know, being around Sean Payton for a long time, and you know this more than me, that he likes to put guys in the best positions, but he wants guys who are going to be consistent in their approach to football, Shanle.
That's how you build stability. When you know what you're getting in players week in and week out. Coach Payton would always say, I don't want yo-yo players. Yo-yo players are guys who 1 week they show up, the next week you can't count on them. They make mistakes. They make mental errors. So Dan being there for 4 years and Dan playing for Coach Parcells, Dan gets it. That's a lot of work. Coach Payton got his no yo-yo player mentality. And you might sign some yo-yo players and you might win some games 1 year, and the next year you're going to be 7-9. And the next year you might be 12-4, and you're going to yo-yo back and forth with your record. And the teams, you look at Belichick. He signs some guys that people scoff at and look at like, those guys aren't good. Those guys don't pass the measurables test. But when they had Brady, obviously they were winning. And I think when you have the quarterback and you have the coach and you have consistent players, you have a chance to win every week in the NFL.
When you played with Dan Campbell, especially in Dallas, did you think he'd be a head coach one day, or is that unfair? It's kind of hard to tell sometimes with guys.
No. I never thought Dan would coach in the NFL. I didn't know he had a passion for coaching. And he went to Miami when Parcells was still there and climbed the ladder and became the interim coach. And when they named him the interim coach, I think in his 3rd or 4th year of coaching, I thought, okay, they must see something in Dan that I never saw player to player. Because Dan would backwards hat, long hair, horsing around in the weight room, screaming, throwing weights around. I'm like, this guy's the head coach, but Dan was entertaining, but he was passionate. And you knew when you talk about not having a yo-yo player, Dan was consistent every day and he gave it his all.
This Saints coaching staff, Joe Lombardi was just hired as the new offensive coordinator with the Chargers. Aaron Glenn's following Dan Campbell up there. Dennis Allen looked like he was going to leave. He had a couple interviews too, but you have turnover in the front office. We talked about Terry Fontenot last week. All these changes, there's going to be player changes. You were in the league 10 years. When you have this kind of turnover with the coaching staff and you have the core, which the Saints will have coming back, how does that affect a football team?
It is tough, but I think you understand as a player that every year is going to be, it's like starting over. You're going to have a core group of players that are going to be back based on what their contract says or based on what their performance has been. But you understand that, you sit here and you look at your, 10 years, you have team pictures and how much of the team changes every year. That's just the nature of the business. And a lot of change happens because it's the business of winning and they're always trying to upgrade certain players or they're getting rid of guys because they're not performing based on their contract or the salary cap comes into focus. So I think what you do as a player is you learn to cherish every single year separately. And we talked last week about how Drew breaks his career into these different, Saints eras. And that's what happens is because one era he got used to seeing the faces. Then the next era he got used to seeing the certain faces for 4 or 5 years. And that's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, it's a lot of change for this team, but we brought in Mickey Loomis' sound from the start that it's not a rebuilding situation. They want to make this work, and I have confidence that Mickey Loomis can make it work. Sean Payton was asked about it, and he said, we tend to find a way, and they do every year. Well, speaking of finding a way, Justin, you know what time it is. More likely time, and we bring back Justin Thomas, our esteemed producer, to answer 3 hypothetical questions. And we even do it when the Saints aren't playing. We do it year-round here on this podcast. And you know what? I live in Tampa, and it's different for me. I go to the grocery store, and I see the Bucs balloons with the Chiefs. It's just haunting me. It's in my face. But this isn't a normal Super Bowl. Even if the Saints would have played here, they wouldn't have showed up until Friday before the game, which would have been really strange. But given the fact that I'm hearing this a lot, maybe it's because I live here, but I'm also hearing it nationally as well, that people are saying, Tom Brady, what a great story. He went into New Orleans and retired Breeze, and then he took care of Rodgers, and now it's Mahomes. And, you give the Bucs credit. They got it done. Despite losing to the Saints 38-3, they won it when it mattered in the playoffs. But given the fact that the Falcons have been irrelevant since they lost in the Super Bowl, they haven't done much. And the Bucs have Tom Brady. They played 3 times this year. They played in the playoffs. Right now, as long as the Bucs have Tom Brady, more likely could we say the Bucs are a bigger rival than the Falcons right now, Justin Thomas?
I think when it comes to the I don't know if animosity is too strong a word, but the kind of hate that Saints fans have for Falcons fans, I don't think anything will ever replace that. There's that unique rivalry between the two teams. If you're talking about purely from a records and a talent standpoint, yes, I think as long as Tom Brady stays at the Bucs, I do think the Saints Bucs matchups will definitely be the bigger matchups versus the Falcons. But I don't think there's any Saints fans who would be out there say that, oh, now I hate the Bucs more than I hate the Falcons. That I don't think that'll ever happen.
All right, I shouldn't even ask Shanle this question, but let me throw gasoline on the fire. Okay, let's just say Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback heading into next season, and we'll see if Brady comes back if they win it all. I think he will. Let's say Brady comes back and Jameis is the starting quarterback. Could possibly the Bucs be a bigger rivalry short term, Shanle, than the Falcons? Or am I crazy?
No way. No way. I think the Buccaneers, they win the Super Bowl. Congrats. You went out and got Tom Brady. You pieced together your roster and won a championship. I think for the next year or two, there will be intrigue. There will be a lot of views. There will be a lot of people watching those games. But no. And the reason the rivalry will never overtake what Atlanta has with the Saints is the cities. The cities hate each other. And that's what fuels a rivalry more than anything.
I agree with you. I just, to me, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Atlanta, too. I'm not hearing a lot about Matt Ryan, Shanle. You hear rumblings that they could retool, but I don't know what – it's going to be interesting to see what the Falcons do because there's a lot of ways they could go. Julio Jones is a great player, but, boy, he misses a lot of games. He misses a lot of football games, and you feel like this is the point in his career where they could get something for him. So we'll see what happens there. I agree with you, though. I think short-term the Bucs are intriguing, but at the end of the day, it's always Falcons, Saints, number one. Speaking of the Super Bowl, we have 2 weeks in between. When you guys played in the Super Bowl, you had 2 weeks. I know sometimes you have a week. Do you think it's better to have a week or more likely 2 weeks between the championship games and the Super Bowl? Justin.
Scott's going to have a better answer than me on this, I know. But I would think it's better to have 2 weeks. I think you don't want to go too far, like in college, where it seems like there's a longer time between the last game and then the championship, or at least it used to be. I think it's closer now. But you don't want to go too far ahead because you want to stay fresh. But I think having that extra week is always good to be able to plan, to look at more film, to have a good strategy going in that you can execute, at least to me logically. But I've never played. Scott, I know, is probably going to have a way better answer than what I have.
Justin, sandbagging right there, man. What do you think, Shanle?
Justin, you're selling yourself short, man. You gave a perfect answer. That's what was going to be my answer. Is this time of year you want the teams rested up, you want injuries to be healed as much as possible, and you want an equal matchup because the bodies are sore. And more than that, when I look at from a team, your fan perspective, gives you an opportunity to prepare for the Super Bowl, whether you're traveling there or you have to make plans, and as a player, you get to enjoy Miami. And that's what I hate about this whole COVID season is it's even affecting the Super Bowl, a limited amount of fans. Now, Kansas City, I know they went to the Super Bowl last year, but I couldn't imagine our Super Bowl experience without going and practicing at the Dolphins and seeing Coach Parcells and then going to the Miami Hurricanes and practicing at their facility. A lot of our greatest memories outside of winning the championship, obviously, were from that Super Bowl week and enjoying our time with our teammates and our families in Miami. So it's a shame, but yes, you definitely need 2 weeks. There's so many different logistical things that need to take place. But my thing this year is 2 weeks bad because I don't want to see somebody test positive.
That was my point.
I don't want to see
Exactly.
somebody get COVID over the next 2 weeks and miss a Super Bowl.
And the NFL is thinking, man, we made it through. We got through the 17 weeks, everything happened. And we got through the playoffs, no distractions in the playoffs. And here we are. We're almost at the finish line. That was going to be my point, too. I agree with 2 weeks. I think it's great. I remember it was such a great situation for the media when you guys made the Super Bowl because the Pro Bowl was in Miami. So the week before, I'm getting Frank Gore on Jonathan Vilma. We're getting all these great stories. So by the time you guys got there, we were ready to go. I mean, selfishly, it was great for us. So, yeah, I just hope nothing happens because you don't want anything to taint this game. It would have been weird, Shanle, though, if let's just say you were playing and this was the year you made the Super Bowl. that you'd fly in on a Friday before the game with all this going on. How crazy would that have been?
It'd be miserable. It'd be absolutely miserable. And I know these players have adjusted to being quote unquote miserable this whole year because it's been odd. It's been Zoom meetings. It's been taking your food from your hotel right when you get there, going straight up to your room. These guys haven't spent a whole lot of time together, and that's just their new normal. But like I said, it would be really hard, and it's such an advantage for Tampa Bay because obviously they're playing in their home stadium. Everything is familiar. I don't think it's going to mean they're going to win the game because of it. But just Kansas City knowing what their Super Bowl week should be like and not being able to experience that could be an advantage for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, well, we agree on that one. 2 weeks is good between championship games and Super Bowl. Well, listen, I've asked this question before, but in a different context. In terms of, we're going to take Breeze off the table because we have Breeze bias a little bit. But if you could take a cross-country trip from, let's just say you got to drive across country. You're pulling out of Georgia and you got to drive to California, but you got to do it with one of these three guys. All right. Who's it going to be? Is it Patrick Mahomes riding shotgun? Is it the GOAT Tom Brady? Or do you bring in Mr. State Farm himself, Aaron Rodgers? Which one, Justin Thomas, is riding shotgun if you had to pick one?
I feel like you could pick each one for different reasons, and that's what makes it difficult. You know, I would love to hear Tom Brady, pick his brain, hear stories, learn about him as a person and how, you know, what makes him tick and why he's so competitive. I could see Aaron Rodgers being entertaining, having great stories. I could also see Patrick Mahomes. That's really, really tough. I think, though, probably at the end of the day, the one I would probably enjoy the most talking to, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to talk to Tom Brady. I just don't know how guarded he is, if he's someone who's going to talk a lot or if he's just going to be more quiet and sit there.
I think you'd let his guard down with you, Justin. I think you would.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I think you would. All right, Shanle, one of the three. You got it. He's got to be your wing guy on the road. Which one?
Brady, Rodgers, and who was the other one?
Mahomes.
Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes. I think I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers.
Really?
I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers because I don't want to be mean, but I think Mahomes' voice would annoy me. I feel bad saying that, but it's true. I don't know if I could sit in there and listen to him that long. Tom Brady, I think, would be kind of boring to me after a while. I would be intrigued by his greatness. I mean, but he's very vanilla for his greatness, and I don't think he'd give me that many great stories.
God,
but
you're changing my mind on this, man. You're changing my mind.
And if you haven't seen it, Pat McAfee, I think Aaron Rodgers has been on his show weekly this year.
I watch it every week.
And I've watched him, and he seems like a pretty good dude that would give some good talks in a car on a road trip.
You changed my mind a little bit because, I watched those interviews. I've talked to guys in Green Bay who cover Rodgers, and they say he is very smug. But I think athletes, and this is why I love asking these questions, Shanle, because I ask you questions. We don't rehearse this. We just do this, raw here in this podcast for the most part. But don't you think from a media standpoint, guys treat the media differently and they're not that guy a lot of the times, athletes? Is that true?
That is true. I think a lot of guys are so trained on not slipping up and saying the wrong thing that they don't really act as themselves, because and a perfect example is Aaron Rodgers. You watch him go on Pat McAfee's show with his former teammate AJ Hawk,
absolutely,
and then you watch him talk to the media, and it's two different guys. So I think guys are pretty much trained to be a certain way in front of the main media.
I'll say this in breaking down my pick here. Mahomes, I'm so impressed with him. You can tell that none of this is too big for him. He grew up the son of a professional athlete. He's not overwhelmed. I love when they interview him after a game, and he's like, man, that was fun. It was like he just finished PE or something. I mean, it was an exercise for him. He's loose out there, but I don't know if I would like to carry a conversation with him that long. Tom Brady, I love to get Belichick stories because I'm sure he'd give me a ton, but those may run out after a couple states. I was going to pick Brady. You kind of talked me into Rodgers. Rodgers to me is interesting because he's really a well-rounded guy. I mean, he's not that Brady and Mahomes aren't smart, but he's like a big Jeopardy guy. He's a big pop culture guy. And on McAfee show, he's talking about all these different movies and Netflix shows he watches and stuff. So I think I'd pick Aaron Rodgers. I think he is the best example of getting to know somebody away from press conferences and and everything. That's why I like that Aaron series we do, is we get to know people away from all that, because it's so hard to get to know athletes, especially today with social media. They have their own platforms. They don't have to talk to the media as much. And you see that even in the offseason with the CBA last year. People weren't talking to athletes. They just aired tweets from Aaron Rodgers. They aired tweets from J.J. Watt and Russell Wilson. You don't talk to guys, especially media-wise, anymore. So interesting feedback there. Well, Justin, where are we on Twitter?
At Dundad Podcast.
And we're on all the platforms. As I mentioned, we've had some feedback from some listeners. We love that. So please give us feedback. Everywhere you can hear a podcast, we're on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, all of them. So please subscribe. Please give us feedback. We will have our Super Bowl picks next week. As we said, 2 weeks of hype for this big game. Should be a great game. We hope that there's no COVID interference, that everybody's healthy, and we can see the best game possible. But that wraps up our podcast. I appreciate my producer, Justin Thomas, and my partner, Scott Shanle. I am merely Mike Nabors. We'll talk to you next week.